Shy Maid pulled out something that shocked him. Cale Voss had ruled with absolute power for 20 years. But he'd never heard a gunshot, never heard a scream, never heard someone beg for their life. Born deaf, he built his empire in silence. That morning, his new housekeeper was cleaning his office when she froze, stared at his ear. Before he could react, she reached out with trembling hands and pulled something small from deep inside his ear canal, something that had been there his whole life, something no doctor ever found. The rush of sound hit him like a physical blow. For the first time in 33 years, Cale Voss heard his own heartbeat. And what came next made him realize everything he knew about his life was a lie. Stay until the end, because this revelation will shatter you. Before we continue, trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let's get into it. Cale Voss ran Portland from an estate overlooking the river. 33 years old, built like someone who understood violence intimately, carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who never needed to raise his voice to be obeyed. Because he couldn't raise his voice, couldn't hear it if he did. Born profoundly deaf, or so everyone believed. So he believed. The doctors had been unanimous since childhood. Congenital nerve damage. Permanent. Incurable. Accept it and adapt. So he did. Better than anyone expected. Cale read lips with deadly accuracy. Could watch a conversation from across a room and know every word spoken. Felt vibrations through floors and furniture that told him who was approaching, how fast, whether they were nervous. Understood body language better than most people understood their own native tongue. His deafness made him more dangerous, not less. People assumed his silence was strategic, assumed he was calculating every word before signing it. Truth was simpler and more complicated. He just existed in a world without sound. The Voss estate sat behind iron gates and stone walls. Security cameras tracked every angle. Armed guards at every entrance. 32 rooms of controlled space where Cale managed his empire through written notes, text messages, and perfect lip reading. His office occupied the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city that paid him tribute in a dozen different ways. The mahogany desk had witnessed deals worth millions. Behind it sat Cale, always in tailored suits, always watching, always 3 steps ahead. The staff moved like ghosts, trained to be predictable, manageable. No sudden movements, no wasted motion, no disruptions to the careful order Cale maintained. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Cale reviewed reports while drinking espresso. Numbers from the docks, construction contracts, casino revenues. Everything flowing exactly as planned. Elliot Quinn arrived for his 3rd day of work. 29, quiet, efficient. Hired as housekeeper after perfect reference checks. Previous employers praised his attention to detail, discretion, ability to work without supervision. More importantly, he came from the old neighborhood, understood the code, knew when to see things and when to be blind. Mrs. Chun, the head housekeeper, had given Elliot clear instructions. Work systematically. Save Mr. Voss's office for last. Never interrupt. Never ask questions. Never assume permission. Elliot nodded at each rule, understanding the weight behind them. That afternoon, he entered Cale's office with cleaning supplies. Moved carefully around the bookshelves, the crystal decanters, the chess set that looked untouched. Cale noticed him peripherally, but didn't acknowledge. Staff was meant to be invisible. Elliot approached the area near Cale's desk to clean the window ledge. Worked quietly, respectfully, exactly as expected. Then he stopped. His hand froze mid-motion, cloth suspended. He was staring at the right side of Cale's head with an expression that made Cale's jaw tighten. Cale looked up. Their eyes met. Elliot's face showed concern. Not fear, not curiosity. Maternal concern that seemed out of place from a male housekeeper half Cale's size. He took a step closer. Cale's hand moved toward his desk drawer. The gun. The response he'd trained in a muscle memory. But Elliot's hands came up slowly. Signing. Proper ASL. May I look at your ear? Please. I see something. Cale went still. First person in this house who'd bothered to learn sign language. First person who'd addressed him in his own language instead of forcing him to read lips. He signed back. What do you see? something that shouldn't be there. I have medical training. May I look? Just look. Cale studied him. Elliot's hands were steady despite obvious nervousness. His expression remained genuinely concerned. Against every instinct screaming danger, Cale nodded. Elliot moved closer, tilted Cale's head gently toward the light, leaned in, examining his ear canal with professional focus. His expression shifted from concern to shock. He signed again. How long have you been deaf? My whole life. Have your ears ever been properly cleaned? Deep cleaned. Doctors examined me regularly as a child. Said my deafness was nerve damage. Nothing to clean. Elliot's face went pale. Mr. Voss, there's a blockage in your ear canal. Large. Impacted. It's been there for years. What kind of blockage? Cerumen. Earwax. Compacted deep. This, Elliot hesitated. This could be causing your hearing loss. Or contributing significantly. Cale's world tilted slightly. My doctors said nerve damage. I worked in urgent care for 6 years. I've seen thousands of ears. This is mechanical blockage, not neurological. Elliot's hands moved faster now, more urgent. May I try to remove it? It might be uncomfortable, but do it. Elliot pulled supplies from his cleaning bag. Not just rags and polish. Proper medical supplies. A small dropper bottle, warm water, cotton swabs, tools Cale didn't recognize. You carry medical equipment to cleaning jobs? Old habit. Never know when someone might need help. Elliot worked carefully, applied warm water to soften the blockage. Waited, applied more. His movements were precise, professional, completely different from how he'd dusted furniture minutes before. This might hurt. Tell me if it's too much. He reached in with a small tool. Gentle pressure. Careful angle. Cale felt shifting deep in his ear canal. Uncomfortable pressure. Movement of something that had been stationary so long it felt like part of his skull. Elliot paused. Still okay. Cale nodded. More pressure. More shifting. Something loosening from tissue it had bonded with over years. Then it gave way. A small, dark mass emerged. Elliot held it in his palm, staring at it with horror. This has been in there for decades. Maybe since childhood. Cale stared at the tiny object. So small. How could something so small? Air rushed into his ear canal. Pressure equalizing. Sensation flooding spaces that had been blocked his entire conscious memory. His hands flew to his head. The feeling was overwhelming. Like drowning, but backwards. Like suffocating, but with too much air instead of too little. Then sound hit him. His own breathing. Ragged. Desperate. He'd felt air moving through his lungs his whole life, but never like this. Never with texture. With rhythm. With presence. The sound filled the room. Crashed against walls. Echoed back at him. Cale's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no words came. How could there be words for this? The clock. The grandfather clock he'd felt ticking through vibrations for 20 years. Now it had voice. Steady. Relentless. Loud. Time announcing itself with each mechanical beat. Elliot took a step backward. His shoes clicked against marble. The sound made Cale flinch like he'd been shot. Car horns in the distance. Construction equipment blocks away. The river moving past the estate. An entire city's worth of sound pouring through windows he'd always believed were silent. Cale stood. His chair creaked. His suit rustled. Papers on his desk whispered as his movement disturbed them. Every tiny action generated noise he'd never experienced. He staggered, caught himself against the desk. The impact of his palm against wood, another sound. Sharp, clear, real. Elliot was crying, tears streaming down his face as he watched Cale experience sound for the first time. Cale tried to speak. His voice came out broken, raw. The vibration in his throat that he'd always felt now had external reality. He could hear himself. It was too much. He sank back in his chair, overwhelmed. 33 years of silence, ending in seconds. This stranger who cleaned floors had accomplished what specialists declared impossible. But as shock began fading, another emotion emerged. Rage. If Elliot could see this blockage, fix it in minutes, then every doctor who'd examined Cale had either been criminally incompetent or deliberately lying. His personal physician, Dr. Brennan Shaw, had examined him yearly since age 10. 23 years of appointments. Always the same diagnosis. Permanent nerve damage. Nothing to be done. Kale's newly awakened hearing caught his own harsh breathing, the grinding of his jaw as anger built. Even his fury had soundtrack now. He looked at Elliot, who was still staring at the wax in his palm, like it was evidence of murder, which in a way it was murder of potential, of connection, of 33 years Kale could never reclaim. His hands moved in sign. How obvious was that blockage? Elliot's response came immediate. Very. Any examination should have found it. Every doctor I saw said nerve damage. Incurable. This is mechanical blockage. Completely treatable. Routine removal. Elliot's face showed growing understanding of what he'd just exposed. Someone lied to you. For your entire life. Kale stood again. Walked to his safe. The combination lock clicked with each number. Another sound he'd never heard. He pulled files. Dr. Shaw's complete records. Financial. Personal. Everything. Monthly payments from an offshore account. Started 23 years ago. $5,000 per month. Every month. Never missed. Over $1.3 million paid to the doctor, who kept saying nothing could be done. Kale's hands shook slightly as he held the papers. The trembling made them rustle. Even his rage had physical sound. He grabbed his phone, could hear the electronic hum for the first time. Dialed Dr. Shaw's office. The ringtone nearly made him drop the device. So loud, so intrusive, so real. Dr. Shaw's office. A voice. An actual human voice coming through technology. Kale had red lips on video calls his whole life. Never heard the actual words. This is Kale Voss. I need an appointment. Today. Now. His own voice sounded strange to him. Rough. Unpracticed at modulating volume since he'd never heard himself before. Mr. Voss, the doctor's schedule. Now. Or I come to his house. Pause. Fear transmitted through telephone lines. 6 p.m. I'll make sure he's available. Kale hung up. Turned to Elliot, who looked terrified. You just changed my life. Kale's voice was getting stronger. But you also exposed that someone's been lying to me for decades. I didn't mean. I just wanted to help. I know. And I'm grateful. Kale's expression went cold. But in my world, lies this big don't end quietly. What are you going to do? Find out who benefited from keeping me deaf. Kale's hands clenched into fists. And make them pay for every day they stole. Kale spent the next 3 hours drowning in sound. Every noise crashed through him like waves against rocks. The hum of his computer, the rustle of papers, the distant murmur of staff in other parts of the house. His brain didn't know how to filter yet. Everything came through at equal volume, equal intensity. Elliot stayed. Not because Kale asked, because he looked like someone who just had their world exploded and rebuilt in the same breath. How do people live like this? Kale's voice was rough, still adjusting to hearing himself speak. Everything is so loud. Your brain will learn to filter. Background noise fades. You focus on what matters. When? Soon. Days maybe. Your mind is processing 33 years of sensory data it never had access to. Kale called Ren, his second in command. The phone rang 3 times. Then a voice answered. Deep, rough, exactly as Kale had imagined from reading lips all these years. Boss. Kale nearly dropped the phone. Hearing Ren's actual voice after 20 years of friendship hit differently than he expected. Ren, I need you here. Now. What's wrong? You sound different. I can hear you. For the first time in my life, I can actually hear you. Silence on the line. Then, what the hell are you talking about? Just get here. I'll explain everything. 30 minutes later, Ren stood in Kale's office, staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Say that again. My housekeeper pulled an earwax blockage out. I can hear now. Perfectly. Ren looked at Elliot, who stood nervously by the window. He did that in about 5 minutes. Something every doctor I've seen missed for 33 years. That's impossible. No, it was just hidden, deliberately. Kale pulled out Dr. Shaw's financial records. Shaw's been receiving payments for 23 years. $5,000 a month. Want to guess from who? Ren studied the documents. His face went dark. Your Uncle Magnus. My Uncle Magnus. Kale's voice turned cold. Who stood to inherit if my father decided a deaf son couldn't lead? You think Magnus paid Shaw to keep you deaf. I think Magnus paid Shaw to maintain a diagnosis that made me look weak. Unsuitable. Ren was already pulling up files on his tablet. Magnus has offshore accounts. Multiple. I've been tracking them for years because you told me to watch everyone. And payments matching Shaw's deposits. Going back 23 years. Kale's hands curled into fists. The leather of his gloves creaked. Another sound he'd never heard before. There's more. Ren scrolled through data. Shaw prescribed you medications as a kid. For inner ear health. I pulled the records. Some of those drugs actually damage ear canal tissue. He didn't just hide my condition. He helped maintain it. Actively. For over 2 decades. Elliot spoke up quietly. That level of impaction doesn't happen overnight. Someone would have needed to ensure it stayed. Kale turned to him. You said you worked urgent care. How common is this? Impacted earwax? Very. We saw cases daily. It's the first thing you check with hearing loss. Every ENT would know to look for it. Every medical student learns it first year. This isn't rare or complicated. Elliot's voice got quieter, which means everyone who examined you either wasn't looking or was deliberately ignoring what they saw. Kale's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. How many doctors examined me as a child? Ren checked files. 3 specialists before age 10. All concluded permanent nerve damage. Then your family hired Shaw as personal physician when you turned 10. Shaw became the only doctor examining me. Convenient. My father. Kale's voice dropped. Did he know? Henrik died 12 years ago, before we could ask him anything. Heart attack. Supposedly. Kale met Ren's eyes. Pull the autopsy report. Already did. 6 months after you asked me to watch Magnus. Ren's expression was grim. Inconclusive findings. Signs that could indicate heart attack or could indicate poisoning. Magnus killed my father? No proof. But the timing. Henrik was about to announce his successor. He'd been meeting with advisors for weeks. Kale remembered those weeks. His father distant, preoccupied. Magnus hovering constantly. Then Henrik collapsed during dinner, dead before the ambulance arrived. And Kale took over by default, only surviving Voss. No choice but to lead. Magnus has been waiting 12 years for another chance. Kale stood, his chair scraping against floor, loud, harsh sound. Keeping me deaf, ensure my father's doubts stayed alive. If Henrik had known your deafness was treatable, he never would have questioned me, never would have considered Magnus. Ren looked at the clock. Shaw's appointment is in 2 hours. I know. Kale turned to Elliot. You should leave. This is going to get ugly. I'm staying. Why? You barely know me. Because you deserve answers. And because someone should witness whatever you're about to do. Kale studied him. This strange man who'd upended his entire existence with one act of kindness. You're not afraid of me. Terrified. But I'm more afraid of what happens if I walk away and you handle this alone. I've handled worse alone. You've handled worse while deaf. That's different. Fair point. They arrived at Shaw's office at exactly 6 p.m. The medical building was emptying. Staff going home. Perfect timing for a conversation no one else should hear. Shaw's receptionist was gone. The door to his private office stood open. Kale could hear Shaw pacing inside. Footsteps on carpet. Nervous rhythm. He pushed the door open. Shaw spun around, clearly having heard them approach. Of course he did. He had functioning ears. The doctor was 60, silver hair, expensive suit, hands that were trembling slightly. Kale, what's this about? Your message sounded urgent. Kale pointed to his ear. Examine this. I'm sorry, my ear. Examine it. Like you have every year since I was 10. Shaw's face went careful. Is something wrong? That's what I'm asking you to determine. The doctor pulled out his otoscope. Kale tilted his head, same position as always. Shaw looked inside. The color drained from his face. The blockage is gone. I know. My housekeeper removed it this morning. Shaw stepped back, setting down the instrument with shaking hands. That's how did in 5 minutes, with warm water and basic tools. Something you missed for 23 years. The deafness was neurological. Was it? Kale's voice stayed calm, deadly calm. Or was it mechanical blockage you deliberately ignored? I don't know what you're implying. Kale placed a folder on Shaw's desk. Financial records. Offshore accounts. 23 years of payments from Magnus Voss. Shaw stared at the papers. His breathing got faster. Kel could hear it now. Could hear panic taking hold. He said it was for your protection. The words tumbled out. That hearing would make you a target. And you believe that? You paid me $5,000 a month. I have a daughter at Princeton, a son in medical school. So you sold my hearing for tuition money. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Cale leaned forward. Explain to me how stealing 33 years of my life was anything other than exactly that. Shaw collapsed into his chair. I was in debt. My practice was failing. Magnus offered a way out. When did he approach you? Before I was hired. He said your father needed to believe you were weak, unsuitable to lead. And you agreed to make that happen. I just maintained the diagnosis. I didn't create it. No, you just ensured it stayed true. Ren dropped another file on the desk. These medications you prescribed. Want to explain why they damage your tissue? Shaw's face crumbled completely. Oh God, you didn't just hide my condition. You actively maintained it. Kale's voice was ice. Every year, you made sure that blockage stayed put. Magnus has said it was temporary, that once you prove yourself, we discover a treatment. When? When was this miraculous discovery supposed to happen? After Shaw stopped. After what? After your father died and Magnus took over. The admission came out broken. But then you became boss instead and Magnus couldn't safely cure me without revealing the deception. Cale finished. So you kept me deaf for 12 more years. Shaw was crying now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I didn't know. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every time you examined me. Every time you told me nothing could be done. You knew. Ren's phone buzzed. He checked it, looked at Cale. Magnus is at the estate. He heard you were looking for him. Perfect. Cale stood. Shaw looked up with desperate hope. What are you going to do? You're leaving Portland. Tonight. If I ever see you again, you're dead. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Elliot. He's the only reason you're breathing. They left Shaw sobbing in his office. In the car, Elliot finally spoke. You're letting him live? Shaw's a coward who took money. Magnus is the one who orchestrated everything. Cale's hands tightened on the steering wheel. And I'm going to hear every word of his confession. Magnus was waiting in Cale's office when they arrived, sitting in the chair across from the desk like he belonged there, like he'd always belonged there. 55 years old, built like someone who'd kept himself dangerous. Henrik's younger brother, second in command for 30 years, serving under his nephew for the last 12 with a smile that never reached his eyes. He looked up when Cale entered, started to sign. Heard you wanted to see me. Cale spoke out loud instead. I can hear you now, Uncle. No need to sign. Magnus froze, his hands suspended mid-gesture. His face went carefully blank. What? I said I can hear. My housekeeper removed an earwax blockage this morning. Cale walked to his desk. Turns out my deafness was completely treatable. Funny that nobody noticed for 33 years. That's wonderful news. Magnus' voice was smooth, controlled, but Cale could hear the tension underneath. The slight acceleration of breathing. Is it? Dr. Shaw seemed less thrilled when I visited him an hour ago. Shaw? Why would you? He told me an interesting story. About monthly payments. About maintaining my diagnosis. About someone who needed me to stay deaf. Magnus' expression hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Cale pulled out his phone. Played a recording. Magnus' voice talking to Shaw, arranging payments, discussing keeping the nephew manageable. You bug your own doctor? I bug everyone. You taught me that. Cale sat down. Paranoia keeps you alive. Your words. Then you know I was protecting you. Protecting me? Or protecting your inheritance? Magnus stood. You were 12 when you went deaf. You remember that. I was born deaf. No. Magnus' voice went cold. You weren't. You had perfect hearing until you were 12 years old. The world tilted. Cale's hands gripped the desk edge. What are you talking about? You don't remember the kidnapping. Of course you don't. Trauma does that. Elliot moved closer, flanking Cale's chair. Ren positioned himself near the door. Magnus noticed, but didn't seem concerned. What kidnapping? Rival family. Ransom situation gone wrong. They held you 3 days. When we got you back, you couldn't hear. Magnus' voice carried something almost like sympathy. We thought they damaged you, beaten you, drugged you. Kale's breath came shorter. You're lying. Your mother couldn't handle it. What they did to you. She killed herself a month later. Magnus took a step closer. Your father thought it was better if you didn't remember. Better if you believed you were born deaf than knew you'd been broken by enemies. Stop talking. So we told you it was congenital. Had doctors confirm it. Made it real in your mind. Kale stood. Get out. But trauma-related hearing loss is treatable. You start remembering, you start processing, hearing comes back. Magnus' smile was cruel, so we had to make it permanent. Physical blockage. Maintained carefully, year after year. You did this. You caused it. I gave you mercy. Henrik wanted you dead after the kidnapping. Magnus' voice rose. He said you were damaged, unsuitable, too weak to lead. So you convinced him to keep me alive, but disabled. I convinced him there were worse things than death, like living as a liability. Magnus' mask was gone now. I saved your life, and you're welcome. Kale felt rage building, could hear his own heartbeat thundering. My mother. Tell me about my mother. She couldn't live with what happened to you. The truth, Magnus. That is the truth. Ren, pull the files. Ren opened his tablet. Margaret Voss. Official cause of death, suicide. But initial police report noted forced entry signs. Unexplained bruises. Investigation dropped after 24 hours. Magnus' expression flickered. She didn't kill herself. Kale's voice went deadly quiet. She was murdered. You can't prove. By the same family that kidnapped me. The family my father supposedly wiped out 2 weeks after her death. Kale stepped around the desk. Except he didn't, did he? He missed someone. What are you implying? You made a deal. With our enemies. They take me, traumatize me. You ensure the damage stays permanent. In exchange, you let them disappear instead of destroying them. Magnus' silence was confirmation. My mother found out. She was going to tell Henrik. So you had her killed and made it look like suicide. You have no proof. I have Shaw's confession. He prescribed medications that damaged my ear tissue. Actively maintain the blockage. On your orders. Kale could hear his own voice shaking with rage. You didn't just hide my condition. You created it. You maintained it. You built my disability with your own hands. Magnus pulled a gun. Fast. Trained reflexes from decades in the life. But Ren was faster. His weapon aimed at Magnus' head before the older man could fully raise his arm. Don't. Ren's voice was ice. Magnus looked between them. Calculated odds. Lowered his gun slowly. You can't kill me. I'm family. So was my mother. Didn't stop you. Kale walked closer. Close enough to hear Magnus' elevated breathing. The fear starting to override control. You stole my childhood. My hearing. My mother. 33 years of my life. I gave you your life. Henrik wanted you dead. Did he? Or did you convince him I was too damaged to live? What's the difference? The difference is who benefits. Henrik doubting me benefited you. Me staying deaf benefited you. My mother's silence benefited you. Kale's voice dropped. Everything that hurt me helped you. So what are you going to do? Kill me? Magnus straightened. Go ahead. Prove you're as ruthless as Henrik. As ruthless as me. Kale stared at his uncle. This man who'd been part of his life since birth. Who'd taught him about the business, about survival, about the cost of power. Who'd stolen everything that mattered. No, you're not dying. Kale's voice was calm now. Clear. You're done. Out of the family. Out of the business. Out of Portland. You can't exile me. I just did. You have 24 hours. After that, every syndicate on the West Coast knows you're unprotected. Fair game. Magnus' face went white. You're sending me out there alone? That's a death sentence. No, death is quick. This is justice. You get to live every day knowing you lost. Knowing I won despite everything you did. Henrik would never. Henrik's dead, and you killed him. Kale met his uncle's eyes. I can't prove it yet, but I will. And when I do, I'll make sure everyone knows you murdered your own brother for power you never earned. Magnus' control shattered. I earned it. I served this family for 30 years. As second. Always second. That must have burned. I was better than Henrik. Better than you. I should have led. But you didn't. Because when it mattered, you weren't strong enough to take it honestly. You had to cheat. Had to sabotage a child. Kale's voice turned contemptuous. That's not strength. That's weakness. Magnus lunged. Ren moved, but Kale was already there. Years of deaf hyper-awareness made him faster than anyone expected. He caught Magnus' arm, twisted, drove him to the floor. You're done. Kale's knee pressed into Magnus' back. Accept it. Magnus struggled. Failed. Finally went still. You'll regret this. No. I'll sleep better knowing you're gone. Ren's men dragged Magnus out. He was screaming about betrayal, about family, about Henrik's legacy. His voice echoed through the halls until distance finally swallowed it. Kale stood there breathing hard, listening to the silence that wasn't silent anymore. Elliot approached slowly. Are you okay? No. I just learned my mother was murdered. That my uncle orchestrated my childhood trauma. That everything I believed about myself was a lie. But you're hearing now. You're free. Am I? Kale turned to him. I can hear, but I still don't remember the kidnapping. Don't remember what they did. My mind blocked it out so completely that my body shut down, hearing to escape. Maybe that's protective. Maybe you're not meant to remember. Or maybe Magnus and Shaw drugged me so heavily I can't form memories of those 3 days. Elliot's face showed horror. You think they did more than just psychological trauma? I think my uncle was capable of anything. And I think the truth is worse than I know. Ren returned. Magnus is gone. We got people watching him. If he comes back, he won't. He's too smart for that. Kale sat heavily. But this isn't over. Someone else knew. Someone helped him. Who? I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out. That night, Kale couldn't sleep. His house was too loud. Every sound he'd never experienced crashed through his consciousness. Pipes humming. Woods settling. Guards walking perimeter. He walked downstairs at 2 a.m. Found Elliot in the kitchen making tea. Can't sleep either? Your house has good acoustics. Every sound carries. How do people live like this? Kale sat across from him. The constant noise. You learn to filter. Eventually, it becomes background. When different for everyone. But you're adapting already. Earlier, you didn't flinch at the chair scraping. Yesterday, that would have made you jump. Fair point. Elliot, why did you really take this job? Elliot's hands stopped moving. What do you mean? You're overqualified for housekeeping. You have medical training. And you knew exactly what to look for in my ear. I told you. I worked urgent care. Don't lie to me. Not now. I can hear the truth in your voice. Silence. Then, Magnus was my patient. 6 years ago, he came to the clinic with ear problems. Kale went still. During treatment, he talked about you. His nephew who was deaf, who'd never hear, who was weak because of it. Elliot met his eyes. Something about how he said it bothered me. So I researched you and found out you'd never been examined by independent doctors. Magnus controlled your medical care. That's suspicious. So you applied for this job to investigate, to help. If I was right, you manipulated your way into my life. Yes, I did. And I'd do it again. Elliot's voice was steady. Because you deserved better than what they gave you. Kale should have been angry. Should have felt betrayed. Instead, he felt something else. Something he couldn't name yet, but could finally hear in the silence between them. Thank you for lying your way in. For caring enough to look. You're not angry. Everyone else in my life wanted something from me. You just wanted to help. Kale's voice softened. That matters more than how you got here. Elliot's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve that forgiveness. Yes, you do, because you gave me back my life. Kale reached across the table, took his hand. The first sound I ever heard was your voice. I'll never forget that. And sitting there in the kitchen at 2 a.m., listening to each other breathe, they both realized this was just the beginning. 3 months later, Kale sat in Dr. Helena Park's office for his weekly therapy session. Trauma specialist, one of the few people he'd allowed into the reconstruction of his past. How's the hearing adjustment? Better. I can filter now. Background noise fades. Mostly. And the memories? Kale's jaw tightened. Fragments. Nothing complete. Just images. A dark room. Zip ties. Someone's voice I can't quite place. Your mind is protecting you. When you're ready, it'll release more. What if I'm never ready? Then you live with what you have. Healing isn't about perfect recall. It's about integration. Elliot attended some sessions. Kale's choice. Having him there made the darkness easier to face. Dr. Park guided them through recovered memory techniques. Slowly, pieces emerged. The kidnapping had happened. 3 days of captivity. But the trauma wasn't what Magnus described. They didn't torture you, Dr. Park said during one session. Your body shows no signs of physical abuse from that time. Then why did I lose my hearing? Psychological shutdown. Your mind couldn't process what was happening, so it removed one's sense. Hearing disappeared because listening to your captors was too traumatic. But Magnus said they drugged me. Beat me? No evidence of that. What I see is a child so frightened that his brain chose silence over sound. Kale processed this. So my hearing could have returned naturally? With therapy? Very likely. Which means Magnus and Shaw didn't just hide your condition. They prevented natural recovery. The rage that statement triggered took weeks to work through. But other discoveries came too. Kale reopened his mother's death investigation, hired private investigators, forensic specialists, people who didn't care about old alliances. They found what the first investigators missed. His mother hadn't been murdered by the rival family. She'd been killed in the Voss estate, in her own bedroom, made it look like suicide. But the autopsy photos showed defensive wounds, signs of struggle, bruising pattern consistent with someone holding her down. Who had access that night? Kale asked Wren. Family only. Henrik was at a business dinner. You were at boarding school. The only person in the house was Magnus. The pieces fell into place. His mother had discovered the truth. That Magnus had arranged the kidnapping. That Kale's deafness was deliberate. She was going to tell Henrik. So Magnus killed her. Made it look like grief-driven suicide. And Henrik believed it, because he was drowning in his own guilt over what happened to his son. Kale stood at his mother's grave 6 months after hearing returned. I'm sorry I didn't figure it out sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. His voice broke. But I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth. I promise. Elliot stood beside him. Quiet support. Had been there through every revelation, every breakdown, every moment of rage and grief. She'd be proud of you, Elliot said softly, of who you became despite everything. How do you know? Because I'm proud of you, and I barely know you 6 months. That made Kale smile despite the tears. Their relationship evolved naturally. Professional boundaries dissolved into something neither could name at first. Elliot stayed on as housekeeper, officially, but really he'd become Kale's anchor, teaching him to appreciate sound. Music, laughter, rain on windows. The first time Kale heard music, he cried. Jazz playing on the radio. He'd felt vibrations before, but never the texture. Never the emotion carried in notes and rhythm. This is what I missed. He listened in wonder. This is what existed the whole time. Yes, and now you get to experience it all. They were in the kitchen when it happened, cooking dinner together, something domestic and normal that Kale never imagined doing. Elliot, I need to tell you something. Okay, the first voice I ever heard was yours. When you asked if I was okay, I remember. I'll never forget that sound. Your voice is what hearing means to me. Kale set down the knife he'd been using, and I don't want to forget it. Ever. Elliot went still. Kale, what are you saying? I'm saying I fell in love with you somewhere between the miracle and the investigation. I'm saying you're the best thing that ever happened to me. He took Elliot's hand. I'm saying I don't want you as my housekeeper. I want you as my partner. In everything. Elliot's eyes filled with tears. You're sure? This isn't gratitude, or it's love? I know the difference now. Ow! Because gratitude is quiet. Love is loud, and you make my world loud in the best way. Elliot kissed him, soft and careful like everything he did. Kale heard his own heartbeat thundering, heard Elliot's breath catch, heard love in the silence between them. 1 year later, they stood in a courthouse. Small ceremony, just Wren and a few trusted people. No spectacle, no performance. The judge asked if Kale took Elliot as his lawfully wedded husband. I do. The words clear, strong, heard by everyone, including himself. Elliot's response came with tears. I do. They kissed as married men. And Kale heard applause for the first time. The actual sound of people celebrating. It was better than he imagined. That night, Elliot gave Kale a gift. USB drive containing audio files. What is this? Your mother's voice. I found old family videos. Had them professionally cleaned. Kale's hands shook as he plugged it in. Click play. His mother's voice filled the room. Singing, laughing, saying his name with such love it hurt. He listened to every file. Hours of recordings. Hearing the woman he'd known only through memory and silence. She had a beautiful voice. She did. And she loved you so much. You can hear it. Kale broke down completely. Elliot held him through it. Through the grief and joy mixing together. 2 years after that first day, Kale had transformed completely. Not just hearing, but healed. Mostly. He'd restructured his operations. Gone more legitimate. Still powerful, but less reliant on violence. Hearing gave him new tools. Negotiation. Reading vocal tones. Building genuine trust. Magnus died in Seattle. Natural causes officially. Kale didn't order it. Didn't mourn it either. Elliot's foundation was thriving. Free hearing health services for low-income families. Hundreds of people helped. Lives changed because one person cared enough to look. No one should be kept from hearing because they can't afford care, Elliot said at the Foundation's second anniversary event. No one should be sabotaged because someone else wants power, Kale added. They helped people together. Built something good from terrible origins. One night, lying in bed, Elliot asked, "Any regrets? About us?" "Never. About everything else?" Kale thought about it. The 33 years in silence. The trauma. The betrayal. The loss. No, because all of it led to you. To this. He pulled Elliot closer. I survived 33 years of deliberate disability. Built an empire despite sabotage. That's not something to regret. What is it then? Proof that what Magnus did to me, what Shaw enabled, didn't break me. I'm not defined by my deafness. I'm defined by how I survived it. And now I'm defined by how I choose to live. With you, with sound, with purpose beyond just surviving. Elliot kissed him. I love you. I love you too. And I can hear you say it. Best sound in the world. Years later, they adopted a daughter. Named her Margaret after Kale's mother. The first time Margaret laughed, Kale cried. Pure infant joy translated into sound he'd never experienced with his own ears. This is what I missed. He held his daughter carefully. This is the sound of happiness. Yes. And now you get to hear it every day. They raised Margaret in a world of sound and love. Taught her about her grandmother. About overcoming impossible odds. About standing up when the world tries to keep you down. One day, when Margaret was 5, she asked, "Daddy Kale, were you really deaf?" "Yes, for a very long time. But Daddy, Elliot fixed you. He helped. But I fixed myself too. With help. Can I hear the story?" So Kale told her. Age-appropriate version. About the man who stole his hearing. About the person who gave it back. About learning that limitations aren't permanent unless you accept them. Margaret listened with wide eyes. "You're brave." "No, sweetheart. I'm stubborn. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Brave people aren't afraid. Stubborn people are terrified but do it anyway." That night, after Margaret slept, Kale and Elliot sat on their porch, listening to the city, to crickets, to life happening around them. "Think she'll remember the story?" Elliot asked. "I hope so. Want her to know that being different isn't being less. You taught me that, before you could even hear yourself say it." Kale took his hand. "We taught each other. That's what love is." They sat in comfortable silence. Except it wasn't silent anymore. It was full of sound, full of life, full of everything Kale had missed for 33 years and would never take for granted again. Because sometimes the smallest acts, pulling out a piece of wax, refusing to look away, choosing to help, change everything. And sometimes the person you think you're saving ends up saving you right back. Share this with someone who needs to hear that what we think are permanent limitations are sometimes just temporary obstacles no one bothered to remove. Because stories like Kale's remind us that healing is possible even from the deepest wounds. That love comes from unexpected places. That being truly seen by the right person makes all the difference. That we're not defined by what's done to us, but by how we survive it. That sometimes the greatest power comes from vulnerability. That choosing to heal, to trust, to love. That's what makes us whole.